Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to have you here today. I don't know if you're a person that pays attention to these kind of things or not, but it is officially football season. Okay? High school kicked off last weekend. College this weekend. The pros are next weekend. We are in the swing of it. Some of you are really excited about that. Others, you could care less, right? You're just like, whatever, I don't care. And so I'm curious for some audience participation this morning. So if you are someone that's excited that it's football season, let me hear that. What about if you're like, I don't give a rip, I don't care at all? I'm very disheartened by my people right now. Well, I'm excited about it. I enjoy football. And for Christy and I this year, it's a new experience because we are, for the first time ever, football parents this year. Braxton is playing football for the very first time as a fourth grader. Braxton is doing any kind of extracurricular sport activity for the very first time. And so this is a new experience. He has shown no interest in athletics, football at all. And now this year he's like, I want to play. We're like, great, but it's starting from scratch. He knows nothing about the game. When I say he's never showed any interest in playing, I could never even give him to watch 5 minutes of a football game with me. I'm like, bud, you want to watch football? No. Okay. And so, but this year he's like, I got friends that are playing. I want to do this. And so, man, he's learning the entire thing, like the entire concept. What do different positions do? What's offense? What's defense? You score touchdowns? What is this, right? He's come a long way. But we're trying to learn. We're trying to work that, and he's loving it. But not knowing anything about the game, or like, hey, let's expose you to it. Let's watch some football together. The one night he was like, let's watch something. I'm like, well, there's no games on, but how would you like to watch some old footage of dad playing football? And he was like, yeah, let's do that. And so I went down in the basement and I got in the tote that has just old stuff in it. And I pulled out the couple of highlight videos that we have and thinking logically, I'm like, we'll go in chronological order. We'll start with the oldest one I have. And so I pull out, it was just a one-game highlight video, about 15 minutes long, the 2002 8th grade Minerva Lions, okay? 22 years ago. So if you're keeping track, or if you know anything about media history, you'll know that what I pulled out was a VHS, okay? For those of you that did not live to see the 1900s, okay, it was this square plastic box that had film inside of it, and light would shine through it, and it would show it. And I had to dig out a VCR, which is another big clunky box that you put the other little box into and hope that it doesn't eat the tape, because that would happen sometimes. And if you ever wanted to find a specific spot, it was the most annoying thing. You'd be like, no, too far, and rewind it, too far, and it's like, dang it, you basically got to watch it from the beginning. That's how VHSs worked. Anyway, that's not the point of this story, but nostalgia is always good. Speaking of nostalgia, we put the video in, we started watching it. It's crazy. Maybe you've had an experience like this of just how quickly something can be a time machine for you. I was instantly transported back in time, and all of a sudden I'm 13 again with my friends. And oh, by the way, this is a side story. It was funny. My dad was the coach, and Braxton, I'm like, there's Grandpa. He's like, that's not Grandpa. I'm like, no, it is. He's just not old, as old, right? And he's not now either, okay? Clearly. But I was transported back in time. The thing that stood out to me the most, the thing I felt the most, was just that very, very deep sense of camaraderie, of the guys that I played with. I would argue that football is unique in that way. Compared to other sports, there's just something about it that's different. I played basketball as well. I had friends that were 3-sport athletes, and they played football as well. And they're like, yeah, there's just something that's different about the camaraderie that is built on a football team as you work year after year after year towards one goal, as you spend off seasons in the weight room, as you spend quality time together throwing up because of conditioning, right? As you spend, the pads and the heat of July minicamp and August two-a-days and the long grueling season that goes from 90 degrees at the beginning of the year to it's snowing at practice at the end of the year. And again, working towards a common goal. Players would come and go, but there was always a core of us that said for 4, 5, 6 years, we're all moving towards that thing together. We're holding each other accountable. We're pushing each other towards that. And what makes it special is not the game itself. The game is fun. I mean, I'd probably pay money to put pads on one more time and just legally destroy somebody. You can't do that anymore. But you're like, hey, you can actually, not on purpose, not maliciously, but But what you really miss and what makes it special is the collective working together towards something. And so as I thought about the guys that I did that with, and I'm watching this video, a scene comes across when it's either pregame or halftime, and I see it's a picture, or it's like video comes across me and one of the guys that I did it with, one of my closest friends. And so for your viewing pleasure, this is me and my buddy Nate Oberly and all of our 8th grade glory. And some of you know Nate, and so if you do, I would suggest getting your phone out right now, taking a picture of that, and you've had to have his phone number, text it to him, just go, aw, look at little Nate there. Because the hilarious thing is he was so small. He was a very little kid, mostly through school, and now he's like a giant. Dude's like 6'5" and just like pretty thick. I'm like, wow, something changed. But what I love about that is more than just, we played together, we pushed each other, we had a common goal. We also played basketball together. We also were close friends through school. We were in each other's weddings. We continue to be close friends today, although we don't get to spend as much time together as we want because, adult life. But here's what I really love. When I saw that, when I thought about that, and the idea of being together on the same team, pushing towards the same common goal, in the grand scheme of things, as much as the game is fun, football doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter for life. I mean, it's great if you love it, if you play it, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't. But what I love now is that Nate and I weren't just on the team working towards something together then. We're on the same team working towards something together now. Because my friend Nate and his family love Jesus. And they're raising their kids to know Jesus. And while I'm here pastoring Hope Community, he is an elder in his local church. And all of us are on this Jesus team, pushing towards Jesus, seeking for others to know and to love and to follow him. We're in that fight together. And as we continue talking today, what we started last week, this series on friendship, like what does like a faith-filled friendship look like? What does a Jesus-centered friendship look like? What does it look like to have friends that model that and to be a friend that models that to other people? We're going to talk about that idea of working towards a common goal. Because part of a Jesus-centered friendship is this idea of linking arms in life and saying we're in this fight together. Like we have something that we are moving towards, and I'm going with you, and you're going with me, and I can't do it without you, I can't do it without me. And so we're going to look at a few passages of Scripture together this morning. The first one is kind of going to lay out what this kind of friendship looks like, and then we're going to look briefly at what I think is a very good example of it from one of the Gospels. But the first passage, is in the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes. And so if you're unfamiliar, our Bibles are broken up into two parts. You have the New Testament. That's when Jesus comes onto the scene. It's about his life, his ministry, his death, his resurrection, the church that springs up out of his death and resurrection. But the Old Testament, we call it old, but it is simply the story of the Jewish people. It's the Hebrew Scriptures. It's their Bible today still. And it is the backstory to the Jesus story. It fills in like, hey, what has been happening up until this point? What is Jesus coming to do and fulfill? And within the Old Testament, you have this book called Ecclesiastes, and it falls into what's called wisdom literature. Now, all of the Bible is meant to give us wisdom for life, but then there's a specific genre it's just like little nuggets of wisdom. They're parables and stories and sometimes little sayings that'll compare and contrast ideas. Ecclesiastes is one of those. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12 give us wisdom about friendship. And so here's what we read. The author of Ecclesiastes says this, Ecclesiastes 4, starting in verse 9, 2 are better than one because they have a good reward for their efforts. And so as he begins to talk about friendship, the first thing he says is like, it's better to have two than one. It's better to be together with someone than it is to be on your own and isolated. And not just because, you got chemistry or it's fun to be with somebody or you have a good time or you like each other, but there's a very kind of practical, pragmatic, real world implications. Two are better than one, and he gives us the reason why. Because there's a good reward for their efforts. There's a good return. That friendship's not just about, hey, I hit it off with this person and I like spending time with them. That's great. But real, like Jesus-centered friendship goes beyond that. It's deeper than that. That friendship's not just about, and I know our students scattered throughout the room are going to make fun of me for this, and I don't care. I've embraced that. Friendship's not just about a vibe, okay? That's a thing for those of you that are my age or older. Vibe is like it's a feeling. There's no definition to it. It's just a vibe, okay? I see the disapproving looks right here. I see it. I see it. But here's the thing. Like there is that thinking, and I'm going to sound like an old person, get off my lawn right now, and that's okay. I can't stand vibe culture, where it's like everything's just a vibe, everything's just a feeling. It's great, and it's like, but that's a good starting point. But there's got to be something deeper than that. Like a vibe's not enough for a good friendship. It's not enough for our faith. It's not enough for a career or politics or economics or any of the big things in life. It's like feelings are good, but at the end of the day, there's got to be something underneath of that. There's got to be something deeper that's holding that thing up. And that's true of friendship as well. And that's what the author of Ecclesiastes is getting at. It's like, hey, no, there's more than just you like this person, you like spending time together, you hit it off, you laugh, you have a good time. No, there's something that when the two of you come together, you are better together than you could be apart. Like there's something about going through life with that kind of person where you can only fully be who God made you to be and do what God made you to do when you have that other person or those other people in your corner. That I'm able to step into what God has for me and you're able to step into what God has for you when we are in it together, moving towards the same goal. There's a reward for their efforts. Now, this is kind of the hypothesis or the thesis statement of this little passage. He begins with, hey, two are better than one because there's a reward for their efforts. And now he's going to give three different illustrations or examples from real life of why that is. Some scholars have pointed out, and I tend to agree with them about this passage, that these three illustrations all come from the dangers of going on a journey or the danger of traveling at this time and place in the world. This is language out. If you were to go on a journey, these are things that might come up during this journey and why you need to have multiple people with you. And I love that idea because then throughout Scripture, the Scripture talks oftentimes about life being like that journey or faith being that path that you walk. And so we read things about the way that you walk, the direction that you go in. We read things like Jesus famously saying, hey, narrow is the path that leads to life. And so two are better than one because they have a good reward for their efforts. And he's going to begin to paint this picture for us. The first reason he says two are better than one is because if either one falls, his companion can lift him up, but pity the one who falls without another to lift him up. If either one falls, the idea is not just to get like tripped up and be like, oh man, I skinned my knee and that hurt. The idea is to fall into like a deep pit and not be able to get out of it. We read verses in Scripture about the dangers of falling into a pit. That the roads at this time would have been treacherous, have been changing elevations, there would have been ravines off to the side of them. And so the idea is not like, oh no, I tripped, will you please help me up? No, the idea is I got stumbled up on a rock and I rolled my ankle and I went 20 feet down into the ravine that's off the side of the road and I'm laying at the bottom with a broken leg. And if I'm by myself, chances are I'm going to die down there unless I get lucky and someone comes by and sees me. It's that kind of help. I cannot get out on my own. If anyone falls, he's got a friend, a companion to pull him out. And again, this is talking about the dangers of a physical journey at that time, but it's this wisdom literature that's talking about life. The reality is for all of us, at some point, you're going to fall. And sometimes it's because life happened and you got tripped up. Sometimes it's because you're standing a little too close to the edge and you're like, oh, that looks cool. And then your footing goes out and next thing you know, you're in a pit. You ever found yourself there? Ever fallen? Ever gotten tripped up? Ever made a really stupid decision? You're like, why did I do that? Bad judgment, bad choice, bad decision. You fell into a pit maybe financially because you had stupid spending habits or the economy that just bottom dropped out. You lost your job and all of a sudden you found out like I'm in a pit right now. You got in a pit relationally, made some really dumb decisions. Maybe you got into a habit or a pattern of thinking and all of a sudden now you can't break out of it. You're like, I wish I didn't do it. I wish I didn't say it. I wish I could get out of this. Maybe you found yourself addicted to a substance at some point. It's like, how did I end up here? I'm stuck in the bottom of a pit and I can't get out. I can't get out. In this verse says, pity the one. And pity is the right word. It's not a word of like judgment, of saying, wow, how terrible are you? You don't have anybody to help you out. It's not a word of anger. Like pity, it's like that heartbreak when you see somebody in a pit and they can't get out, nobody can help them out. You're like, oh my gosh, like my heart breaks for you. There have been a lot of times that my wife Christy and I, we've had this conversation. I've had a conversation with friends. We go through something in our life or see somebody else going like, I don't know how people do it without Jesus-centered friendships. Like I would be a mess right now, some of the things that we've gone through, to not have somebody to help us out and to pull us out. Pity the one who doesn't have, and the word that he uses, we translate companion. The Hebrew there that this was written in is the Hebrew word haber. And the definition is a noun. It means one who is in close association as a companion, partner, or a friend. And here's the key part. With a focus on the elements that one has in common with the others in the association. It can be used then like as an adjective as well, to be associated with, having a very close association based on a common goal. And so it's not just about, hey, we're friends, we like each other, we're friendly. It's no, we are in something together and we're moving towards something together. I think for us, the way that we use language and think about things, companion, that works. I think a stronger word might be the word comrade, where we get the idea of camaraderie from. Comrade, right? Like it implies a friendship where we have the same goal, the same heartbeat, the same fight. That's why this is often a word that is used of soldiers. It's a word that is used of teammates. It implies that we're moving towards something together. We're in the fight together. Christian community is where we have and where we are companions and comrades, where we're in this together, where we're moving towards the same goal. And that goal, it plays out a lot of different ways, but it's like, hey, that goal is we are trying to follow Christ together. We're trying to move towards him. We're trying to look like him. He's doing a work in us. He's changing us. He's sanctifying us. And I want to move in that direction in all areas of life. And you're going there and I'm going there and we're going there together. And sometimes I need you to push me, pull me, carry me. And sometimes you need to push, pull, and carry the other person, but we're moving that direction, and we can only get there together. For if either one falls, his companion can lift him up, but pity the one who falls without another to lift him up. So that's the first illustration that he gives. The second one is in verse 11. He says, also, if two lie down together, they can keep warm. But how can one person keep warm alone? Now, this is a text that was produced and written in what was the ancient Near East, the area of Israel. It is a very arid climate. It is a desert climate. There can be wild temperature swings in desert climates where it gets bitterly cold at night, especially different times of year and different seasons. Travelers in Israel's like cold winter nights would need to travel together and huddle together to keep warm. You share body heat in that way. So multiple people together can keep warm, but he asks this open-ended question, how can somebody keep warm alone? And the answer is, well, you can't. You can't. And so this picture isn't necessarily, the companion isn't necessarily as active. I'm not pulling you out of a pit. It's just by the very nature of me being right there beside you, you can survive till the morning. You can make it till the morning. You can make it through the cold, dark winter. There's that idea that maybe you've heard of the dark winter, or the dark night of the soul, that was originally comes out of a poem by like a medieval time monk, St. John of the Cross, and this idea of sometimes we find ourselves in the dark night of the soul, where we go through seasons of grief, of loss, of desperation, of confusion, of pain, of temptation and trials. And in this picture, he's saying, listen, we're going to go through that. Winter is a season, and we have these seasons in life, and they come and they go, but you better hope that you've got somebody to be there with you over the cold, dark night of the winter. To stay beside you, not to do anything, not to say anything, but just their very presence until the morning light breaks. That helps you to survive it. If two lie down together, they can keep warm, but how will one person keep warm alone? And then the final picture that he gives, again, these dangers on a journey, whether that be falling into a pit, whether that be the frigid temperatures at night, and the final one, verse 12, if someone overpowers one person, two can resist him. Another one of the dangers of being on a journey like that, on the roadside, where there would be burglars and bandits, robbers waiting to attack travelers that were alone or that were vulnerable. And so they would hide in cliffs or in ravines or behind corners, and they would jump out, and they would beat somebody, take their stuff, and leave them for dead. Roads were dangerous. This is actually the way that Jesus starts one of his most famous parables and stories, the parable of the Good Samaritan. He says there was a man who was on a journey. He was traveling, and a robber jumped out, beat him, took his stuff, and left him for dead. And this was a common thing that happened. And if one person is overpowered, though, the author tells us two can resist him. Two can put up a fight. Two can defend themselves. That there is strength in numbers. The reality is that if we're talking, this is a journey, this is life, right? During life and in faith, like you don't have to be a Christian. This is just a life thing, but this is especially true of the Christian faith. At some point, attack will come. Attack comes. And sometimes it comes in the form of other people. I don't know why, but sometimes people are just jerks, right? And maybe you got someone at school, or you got someone at work, you got someone in your family, you got a neighbor. It just seems like they have it out for you, and they spread lies about you, they gossip about you, whatever that is. And it's just like, man, it's attack after attack after attack. Sometimes that happens. But here's something as a Christian I can guarantee you will happen. It may not come from another person, but there will always be attack by our spiritual enemy. And in fact, the attack is always from the spiritual enemy. Sometimes the attack may come through another person, but it is coming from our spiritual enemy. Scripture tells us that we don't wage war against flesh and blood. People are not our enemies, but the powers and principalities of darkness is our true enemy. We oftentimes think of like Satan, like that's his name, but it's actually his title, and it means adversary. Ha-Satan means the adversary. We have someone who is an adversary to us. We have a spiritual enemy who is on the prowl. In fact, Peter writes in this letter, 1 Peter 5:8, that Satan is on the prowl like a roaring lion. That he's just seeking to devour someone. I don't know if you guys have ever watched like a Nat Geo or Discovery Channel thing. I'm talking about when the lion is on the hunt and you get the little voiceover and it says, "Oh, the lion is looking to pounce on his prey." And you see like the little innocent, it's like there's the cute little pack of zebras or antelope and whatever, and you're like, "Aw," and then the music changes. You're like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't want this to go where it's going to go." And then they kind of zoom in and it's slow and he's creeping in the grasses, and then it cuts over to like one of the zebras or the antelope that's by itself. And it's down, it's eating the grass, and then it hears something and it goes, you don't talk about it, and you're like, "Oh no, I know what's going to happen." And out comes the lion and picks off the one that's all alone. It's always the one that's alone. They don't mess with the pack because there's strength in numbers, but they find the one that's isolated and they say, "Lunchtime." And down it goes. And that is the picture of our spiritual enemy, Satan, for those of us that are followers of Jesus, saying, yeah, if you get isolated, if you get alone, man, he is coming after you. You gotta have anybody to fight with you, to fight on your behalf, to be there and say, "I'm in the fight, I'm standing here with you," and you're all alone. We are in a fight every single day that we can't win on our own. And you know how many people, metaphorically speaking, as we talk about the road and the journey, how many people have ended up dead on the side of the road because they thought they could do it alone? I don't know how many people's lives I have seen just destroyed or blown up because they thought this, "No, I can do it. I got it. I can handle it. I don't need anyone. No one needs to know. I can fix this myself. I made this mess. I'll get myself out of it, and then maybe I can get into community." And just how many people's faiths have been destroyed, how many people's families have been destroyed, how many people's reputations have been destroyed because they bought into the lie of saying, "I got this." And Satan said, "Yeah, just see." There's strength in numbers. And so 2 are better than 1 because there's a return. And he's like, here's some pictures of what that looks like. Pull you out of a pit, lie down together and keep warm. Stand up and fight for you when the attack comes. And then he kind of ties a bow on it, the second part of verse 12, and says, "A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken." Cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. This is actually a common kind of proverb in what was known as the ancient Near East. So ancient Israel and their neighbors, there was oftentimes talked about the strength of a 3-ply cord. And so this wasn't just a Hebrew Jewish saying, but this was true of the other cultures as well. There's something about strength in a cord of 3 strands. And so you have that going on. But also, in Hebrew, the way that they would write things and say things, they would use a numerical sequence sometimes to communicate a full measure of something. And so it would be like X plus 1. So number plus 1. 2, even 3 is this, and this. There are 6, even 7 things, this, and this. 7, even 8. 6, even 7 things that the Lord hates. And it's not about the numbers, it's 4 and it's 5, it's 6 and 7. It's the idea of saying this is the full and complete measure. And so the idea of the passage then not being, hey, it's important that you have 1 friend so there's 2 of you, or 2 friends so there's 3 of you. No, it's important that you have the full measure of unity. To have as many people in your corner as you can possibly have. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. You've got this crew, you've got this group of people that say, we are in this together, we've got the same goal, we are moving towards the same thing. Having a team, having people who are in your corner. 2 are better than 1. There's a return on their investment. There's a reward for their efforts. Here's some examples of what it looks like. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. Get some people in your corner. So that's the wisdom from Ecclesiastes. I think we see this illustrated really well in an encounter in the life of Jesus. In the Gospels, there's a moment that we're going to read. We're looking at from the Gospel of Mark, where this idea of being in it together, friends, making sure they're doing this thing together, just has a powerful return. And so Mark chapter 2, we read this, that when this is talking about Jesus, entered Capernaum again after some days, it was reported that he was at home. And so many people gathered around. There was no room, not even in the doorway, and he was speaking the word to them. So as is usual, where Jesus shows up, big crowds of people show up. They're in this house, and Jesus is teaching all of these people. And there's no room for anyone. They're just packed in like sardines. Verse 3 says, they came to Jesus, bringing a paralytic, carried by 4 of them. And so now you have the scene. There's 4 people carrying, like a stretcher, carrying a mat, and there's a paralyzed guy on it. Verse 4 says, since they were not able to bring him to Jesus because of the crowd, they removed the roof above him. After digging through it, they lowered the mat on which the paralytic man was lying. There's this interesting juxtaposition here between the crowd and then these 4 friends. That being part of the crowd is not the same thing as being a disciple of Jesus. The crowd kind of stands and watches. Meanwhile, these disciples, they commit themselves to action to find a way to get to Jesus, and it's embodied by these 4 friends. And so they come up with this plan of action. They get their friend up on the roof, and they just start digging, right? The roofs at that time were made, there was a rough kind of structure, and then there'd be straw and mud and stuff just kind of layered together to make a roof, so you could dig through it with some effort. And this wouldn't be like a fast thing where it's boom, hole, okay, we'll just dig, drop them in there. It was I don't know how long it took them, but they're probably chipping and clawing and digging, and everyone's like, what is going on? And Jesus is just teaching, and the friends, they just keep digging and digging and digging until they get the hole, and they start to lower the man down through the roof. Verse 5 says that seeing their faith, Jesus told the paralytic son, your sins are forgiven. He says, your sins are forgiven. The root cause of your disease, your sickness, your paralysis, I want to heal that. I want to take that away. Your sins are forgiven. The religious leaders, they really don't like that. They start calling him out and say, hey, who can forgive sins except God himself? At which point I kind of picture Jesus going right? Because I know who can forgive sins but God himself. He's I am him in the flesh, right? And so then he's but just so you know, I've got authority to do this. He goes ahead and heals his legs as well. The guy gets up and he walks. And so he forgives his sins. He heals the man's legs. His life is completely changed. Everybody's amazed. Everyone is in awe. But look at what Jesus says. He saw their faith. Their faith. Now, it's interesting. The text doesn't actually make absolutely clear. Are you talking about the faith of the friends or the faith of the guy on the mat? I think the answer is yes. The circumstances and the context would lead us to believe that actually it's the faith of all 5 of them. The man on the mat had faith that Jesus could heal him, but he couldn't get there on his own. The men carrying him had faith that Jesus could heal him, and they were willing to find a way and to carry him to Jesus. All 5 of them had faith. It was all 5 of them working together. To put that around the language that we looked at in Ecclesiastes, one friend had fallen into a pit, couldn't get himself out, but 4 were there to lift him up. One friend, who knows how long he had been like this, was a lifetime thing, was this years, was this whatever. One friend had been going through that cold, long, dark winter, and 4 of them said, you're not going to be there alone. One friend had come under attack by the enemy, that his paralysis was a result of the fall. It was a result of the work of Satan in the world. And 4 friends said, we're going to stand here and fight with you, and we're going to get you to the one who has already won the battle. And they had one goal: get this man to Jesus. Get this man to Jesus. That is a picture of what Christian community is meant to be. It is all of us saying, hey, we're all moving towards Jesus together. Sometimes we're the ones carrying each other. Sometimes we're the one being carried. But we're going to Jesus together. We're doing whatever it takes to get there, because 2 are better than 1. Because I can't be who God's made me to be and do what he's made me to do without you. And you can't do it without me. And that's the beautiful thing about Christian community. There's something that we come together collectively and say, you are not going to follow Jesus by yourself. Not just saying that in an encouraging way, hey, don't worry, buddy, you're not in it. No, we're not going to let you follow Jesus by yourself. But we will push each other, we will drag each other, we will encourage each other, we will call each other out, we will kick each other's butts when we have to. Because Jesus is that direction, our eyes are fixed on him, and we are following him together. In every area of life. That's saying if you're someone in here that's you're a young person, you're in school, you're getting ready to go into college, or the beginning parts of your life, hey, you're trying to navigate a whole bunch of things and figure that out. You're not doing it by yourself. We won't let you. You don't have to figure it out by yourself. For those of you that are parents in the room, you're not raising your kids by yourself. Those of you that are married people in the room, hey, you don't have to try to navigate the complexity of relationship and rough patches. You don't have to do that by yourself. For those of you who are dealing with loneliness because maybe you don't have somebody and you feel like you've been alone for a long time, you don't have to do that by yourself. For those of you that feel like you're in that long, dark, cold winter night of the soul, and there's grief and there's loss and there's despair, maybe there's nothing I can do to get you out of that, but I can lay there beside you until the morning comes. That is what Christian community is about. That's what it's about. That's what we are invited into. Man, I pray and I hope that you have that. And I pray and I hope that if you don't, you'll take steps to get there. That is what God has made the church for. And we do it imperfectly and we blow it. And it doesn't always look the way it should. But we're moving towards Jesus together. And ultimately, he is our example. He is our example. Last week we began this series talking about, hey, like Jesus perfectly models friendship. As I think about those attributes that we saw in Ecclesiastes of why is it better to have somebody with you, like that is what Jesus perfectly embodies. Because all of us, we're in a pit. We are in a pit that was dug by our own sin and our own shame and our own guilt, and we could not get out of it. And he reached down and pulled us out. He didn't toss down a rope or a ladder. He tossed down a cross. He paid for our sin on it so that we could get back to him. We have the promise of him no matter what we go through, that he will not leave us. He will not abandon us. He will not forsake us. He will be with us and within us through the power of his Spirit, even in the coldest and darkest of nights. We have the promise of when the enemy attacks, the promise of knowing that that enemy is already defeated because of what Christ has done, and that we are not alone in the fight. We have his Spirit empowering us. And so all of this is about what Jesus has done for us and what he's calling us to step into and what he's calling us to be to one another. Again, he did it perfectly. We won't do it perfectly, but that's the direction that we move in, because two are better than one. All of us is better than any one of us as we do this thing together. Let's pray. God, we thank you for who you are. We thank you that, Jesus, even when we were down in that pit, you didn't leave us there. But Lord, through your life, death, and resurrection, we have life, we have freedom, we have a hope, we have a future. We hold to your promises that you will never forsake us, you will never abandon us, that you are closer than we can possibly imagine. We hold to the hope that the enemy is defeated, that you are victorious, and you empower us through your Spirit to live in victory every single day. And God, I ask, as we just try to figure out what does it look like to live that out, what does it look like to pursue you, to fix our eyes on you, the author and perfecter of our faith, to run the race that you have marked out for us. Lord, I pray we would do that, and we would do it together, and we would push, and we would pull, and we would carry one another across that finish line. We pray these things in Jesus' name.